I'm like the rest of you. The election's next Tuesday, and I'm watching stuff. And I think what happens a lot of times, and we all do this in life, is we take the exception, and because we all have confirmation bias, we want to make it the rule. My entire life with polling for presidents, polling was pretty accurate within 3 or 4%. Polling's always been accurate. Then in 2016, it wasn't with Trump, the silent Trump voters. But now conservatives tend to think, well, polling's no longer accurate. Well, my whole life it was accurate. Why, because of 2016, would it suddenly, you can't trust any polling? We do polling at Fox all the time. It always ends up being accurate. Companies all over the country do polling constantly. It's accurate. But because in 2016 it wasn't accurate, everybody now, conservatives are like, well, you can't trust polling. At Fox, I use it in some of my personal businesses. I use it at Fox. I use it at Premier Radio. Polling's always worked. We can't take an outlier and say, this is the new rule. That's the basis of where I come from. It's not a political rant, it's football. So 2 things have been true in my life for quarterbacks. First of all, don't listen to anybody. Size matters. Of the 30 best quarterbacks of all time, 28 are big men, over 6'2.5". I'm 6'2". I am taller than almost everybody I walk around at Fox. That's big. The average great quarterback is like 6'2.5" up. Peyton, Tom, Ben, Aikman. You ever stood next to Troy Aikman? Big chest, big hands, big shoulders, big head. He's a big guy. So that's a fact. But because Russell Wilson dances around, we're like, well, look at that, it's the future. No, it's not the future. He's unbelievable. And because Kyler Murray is also unbelievable, and Fran Tarkenton was unbelievable. You don't remember him. I do, because I'm older. He played at Georgia, then the Vikings. He was the first runaround small quarterback. 3 small quarterbacks, you could argue Michael Vick, not at that level, but close, have worked. And they're all runaround guys. You can't catch Kyler. You couldn't. Fran Tarkenton ran circles around people for 10 years. I watched. I was just a kid. I didn't have facial hair then. And then Russell does it, and Kyler does it, and Michael Vick did it. Tua is small and isn't really that athletic. So he has to be like 2016 polling. He has to be a historic exception. Can he be Drew Brees? Good God, that's asking a lot. Drew Brees is the outlier in the history of football. Small, doesn't have a huge arm, doesn't run around, and wins. That's the only prototype I get to use? That's it? I can't take 2016 polling and say, that is the new rule. Polling never is accurate. Of course it's accurate. Trump was a unique businessman that ran for president. He was out there, a lot of bragging, and people didn't want to admit they liked him, but I can't say that's polling. Companies, there's a lot of polling beyond political polling that's used every day by Amazon and Microsoft. They're doing polling constantly. What product will you like? What product won't you like? It's all pretty accurate. This idea that size doesn't matter is nonsense. It doesn't. Go look at the 40 best quarterbacks. They're almost all big. And when you do get the 5'11 and a half guy, Fran Tarkenton and Russell Wilson, yeah, you can't catch them. They're like comets. Nobody can catch Russell Wilson. And then Kyler Murray, you look out and you're like, oh, that's going to work in the NFL. Come on, you can't even. Kyler Murray does. He's like a marble on a wood floor. A cat couldn't catch him. Tua's got all the small, but none of the wiggle. So he's going to struggle to see over offensive lines. And unlike a Kyler Murray or a Fran Tarkenton or a Russell Wilson, who move around a lot and therefore open up passing lanes they can see, Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray, they throw interceptions, and we all acknowledge, analysts acknowledge, they couldn't see over the offensive lineman. So I get the small without the wiggle. Show me the success stories. 1, Drew Brees. I'm not, and I told you, you were here. I do think his comp, leadership A+, toughness A+, smarts A+, big game productivity A+. But I had this epiphany. I'm like, I'm watching all these comments on polling, and I'm like, suddenly polling's never accurate? That's silly. That's not true. Polling's accurate all the time. 90% of the time it's accurate. And this idea that short and no wiggle is going to dominate in the NFL, I'm like, who are the 2 quarterbacks? Let me ask you this. So Think about Burrow and Justin Herbert. They're both way better than we thought, right? Like Burrow is good, and most of you thought was good, but Burrow and Herbert's big with a big arm. And we're all like, I can't believe he's good. We were stupid. He's a 4-point student with a rocket arm who's big and runs around. So he's got the arm Tua doesn't. He's got the size Tua doesn't. And he's got the wiggle Tua doesn't. That's why he's successful, because he can buy time. He runs around. He's got a huge arm. You can hit him. He's got huge size, no injury history. He's got all the things that Tua doesn't. And it's working big time in the NFL. Joe Burrow doesn't have a huge arm, but he's got all sorts of wiggle. He's got all sorts of wiggle. And he's got size. Tua doesn't have any of that. See, sometimes it would be perfect, right? If you were creating companies, if you're Jeff Bezos, if you're Mark Cuban, all these guys have had epiphanies, but they never come when you want them to. That's why you get all the information you can get before a draft. You hope you get the epiphany before the draft. But sometimes, and I've talked to Bill Polian and Hall of Fame GMs, they're like, I had an epiphany. It was in camp. I'm like, oh, of course it didn't work. Of course he doesn't work. Just like all these great business leaders. Bill Gates has had failures. Steve Jobs had failures. Jeff Bezos. Not all their businesses work because they get the epiphany after the deadline. And the deadline's the draft in the NFL. That's the deadline, the draft. You got to have your epiphany before the draft. And I'm driving this morning and I'm like, wait a minute. This could be terrible. This could not work at all. This is why you have to play Tua now. You have to find out. You have to find out. Put him out there, 8 games, let's watch. And I hope I'm wrong. And maybe I am wrong. But I'm sitting there this morning thinking, did I whiff on this? I had my epiphany. It's too late. I already bragged about him for 6 months. All right, so this is, I will admit, I am from the coast, and I've lived a coastal life. Okay, I'm one of those coastal elites. It's nothing against the Midwest, but, Midwestern people are very nice. They save their money. They pay off their house. Flies land on their head. They act like, it didn't happen. This is sort of a Midwestern thing. Joy is from Pittsburgh, which is not Midwest, but is closer to it. So she probably has this Midwest ethos. Only one vacation a year. You buy used cars. It's very Midwest. And there is nothing wrong with that, although I do acknowledge that I would tell you if a fly lands on your head, you should knock it off. The point being on this is there's nothing wrong with buying used cars. There is nothing wrong with putting away money. There is nothing wrong living below your means. Don't you want to be a player once in your life? Don't you want to take Darlene to a Ritz-Carlton once? Spend $8,000 at a roulette table? Don't you want to be a player once in your life? Do you always want to go out with the guys and, well, I spent $4 on a baked potato and $7 on a pork chop and $3 for... Don't you want to pick up the check once? Be a player? Like one time? Buy Darlene flowers, even if it's not her birthday? Just because? Add some lingerie? Don't you want to be a player once? Green Bay? Be a player. The Green Bay Packers have interest now in Will Fuller. I don't know if it'll work, but Green Bay has a history of living below their means and buying a used car. They get lucky at hell as quarterback with Favre and Aaron Rodgers, and they never really got those guys enough talent. Seattle's upgrading, the Niners upgrade, Baltimore upgrades, Philadelphia does, the Rams do. They roll the dice all the time. They take their wife to Ritz-Carlton. They buy new golf clubs they can't afford. They buy a new sports car occasionally. They buy flowers when it's not their wife's birthday. Green Bay, go for it. You butchered the second pick in the draft. You needed a wide receiver. Go get Will Fuller. I don't know if it'll work, but you owe it to Aaron Rodgers. He's 37 years old. He's broken his collarbone twice. And I'm watching all these other teams adding pieces and adding. Seattle adds a legitimate defensive lineman, and Baltimore's adding this, and the Niners want to add this. Don't be the guy that goes to Vegas and stays 3 blocks off the strip at Ellis Island. Go stay at Aria. Win. Be a player. Don't be the guy that counts your baked potato and your applesauce and then figures out exactly how much the tip is. Take the cheese head off. Just pick up the damn check. Just once in your life, Buy a sports car. I'm not saying you should have 6. I'm not saying you should do it when you just had your 3rd kid and you're putting away money for college. But Green Bay can be so Midwestern, it's paralyzing. You're not going to get another Aaron Rodgers. You're not going to go from Favre to Rodgers to another legend. It's not happening. I guarantee it. You know how lucky you are to get Aaron after Favre? Do you know how lucky the Colts were to get Luck after Peyton Manning? That doesn't happen. You get John Elway, and then you're literally 25 years searching for it. You get Dan Marino, it's 25 years searching for it. New England's figured it out. Brady leaves. Let's get bad fast, reboot, and get the next guy. Go get Will Fuller. You're never going to get another Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre. It's over. Nobody's that lucky. You're too good of a franchise to get a top 4 pick. And the sport is now so quarterback-driven. This is why New England's got to get up in the top 5 or 6 picks. With Aaron, you're never going to be that bad. You know, Jordan Love, early reports, that's not working. Okay? So all I know is this. Tampa Bay is excellent, and then they added Gronk. And now they add AB. They're still adding pieces. They'll probably add another piece. They added Leonard Fournette. They didn't have to have Leonard Fournette. They don't need AB. They didn't have to have Gronk. They already had 2 good tight ends. They're adding pieces. They're going for it because they know Tom Brady is 43 years old. And Seattle's adding Carlos Dunlap yesterday. Why? Because Pete Carroll's 69. How long is he going to be around? And Russell Wilson's playing the best football of his life. He can't play like this for the next 4 years. Come on, man. I know the cheeseheads are cool. I know that Packer jersey makes you feel special. Just once buy a sports car you can't afford. Just one time go to Vegas and pick up the check. Little lingerie and flowers just because. Not because it's an anniversary, just because. Go get Will Fuller. And I don't even know if it's going to work, but you owe it to Aaron Rodgers. You owe it to yourself. You butchered the 2nd pick in the draft. You owe it to him, and you owe it to you to go for it. And if a fly lands... Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.